My apartment was my sanctuary, the one place where I was in complete control. That peace shattered the moment my fiancé, with a cheerful announcement, began the hostile takeover of my entire life. The scent of garlic and ginger sizzling in sesame oil filled my apartment, a comforting cloud that always signaled the end of a long workday. It was my sanctuary, this place, every square inch of it. I'd saved for 6 years for the down payment, working 2 jobs through my early 20s. The custom-built bookshelf, the ridiculously comfortable sofa I'd splurged on, the little balcony garden I nurtured with obsessive care, it was all mine. It was the one place in the world where I was in complete control. The jingle of keys in the lock was followed by the familiar thud of my fiancé, Alex, dropping his work bag by the door. "Smells incredible, babe," he called out, his voice bubbling with an unusual level of excitement. I smiled, stirring the vibrant green snap peas into the wok. "Just for you. How was your day?" He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and kissing my shoulder. "It was fine, but I have amazing news." "Oh yeah? Did you finally win the office lottery pool?" I teased, leaning back into his embrace. "Better," he said, his chest puffing up with pride. He spun me around to face him, his eyes shining. "My sister's moving in. Mom's decision." The spatula clattered from my hand onto the floor. The sound echoed in the sudden silence, louder than a gunshot. All I could hear was the dying sizzle from the stove and the frantic thumping of my own heart. "What?" I managed to whisper, my brain struggling to process the string of words he'd just so cheerfully delivered. "Sister, moving in. Mom's decision." None of them belonged together, and they certainly didn't belong inside my apartment. Alex's smile faltered slightly at my reaction, but the triumphant gleam didn't leave his eyes. "Yeah, Chloe. You know, she lost her job last month and her lease is up. Mom came up with the perfect solution. She can stay with us until she gets back on her feet." I stared at him, my mouth agape. "Stay with us? Alex, where?" "In the hallway. This is a 1-bedroom apartment." He waved a dismissive hand as if I was bringing up a trivial detail. "She can take the sofa. It'll be fun, like a slumber party. And it's just for a little while. A month or 2, tops. Mom said we have to help family." A cold knot of dread was forming in my stomach, quickly overriding the initial shock. It was the last part that did it. Mom's decision. Mom came up with the solution. Mom said. It was as if my opinion, my existence in this equation, was completely irrelevant. This wasn't a discussion, it was a proclamation. "Alex," I said, my voice dangerously calm. I bent down, picked up the spatula, and placed it deliberately on the counter. "When, exactly? Were you planning on asking me if your sister could move into my home?" I made sure to emphasize the word "my." He'd moved in with me a year ago, but the mortgage, the bills, the deed, they were all in my name, a fact he seemed to conveniently forget whenever his mother had an idea. His face clouded over. The cheerful fiancé was gone, replaced by someone defensive and a little bit sullen. "Why are you making this a big deal? I knew you'd be cool with it. You're always so generous. Chloe's my sister. What am I supposed to do, let her be homeless?" "Of course not," I shot back, my voice rising. "But you don't make a unilateral decision about my living space, Alex. You talk to me. We are supposed to be a team, a partnership. Your mother doesn't get a vote in this relationship, and she certainly doesn't get to decide who lives in my home." "Oh, here we go," he muttered, rolling his eyes. "You always have to make it about my mom. She was just trying to help. Chloe is packing up her U-Haul as we speak. She'll be here tonight." The air left my lungs in a whoosh. Tonight. He was telling me this now, and his sister, with all her belongings, was arriving in a matter of hours. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it stole my breath. The stir-fry was forgotten, probably burning on the stove. My sanctuary was being invaded, and the man I was supposed to marry was holding the door open for the invaders. "A U-Haul?" I asked, my voice trembling with a fury I hadn't felt in years. "Alex, people don't rent a U-Haul to move onto a sofa for a month or two. How much stuff is she bringing?" He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, a nervous tic I knew all too well. It was his tell. He was hiding something. "Well, Mom said it was just easier to move everything out of her old place at once. Saves money on a storage unit." A horrifying suspicion began to dawn on me. This wasn't a temporary solution. This was a long-term plan that I was the last to know about. I took a step closer to him, my eyes narrowed. "Alex, look at me. How long is Chloe really staying?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at his shoes, at the tile floor, at the spatula on the counter, anywhere but at me. He mumbled something I couldn't hear. "What was that?" I demanded. He finally looked up, his expression a miserable mix of guilt and defiance. "Mom already paid Chloe's first and last month's rent to me. She said it would make it official." The world tilted on its axis. "Paid you?" I echoed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Alex, my fiancé, you took money from your mother to rent out my sofa in my apartment. Without my permission?" Every word was a separate, icy shard of disbelief. I felt a strange, detached calm wash over me, the kind that precedes an earthquake. "It's not like that," he insisted, his voice cracking. "It's a contribution for groceries and electricity. Mom didn't want Chloe to be a burden on you. She was trying to be considerate." "Considerate?" I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that held no humor. "Considerate would have been a phone call, Alex. A conversation, not a back-alley deal between you and your mother about how to colonize my home. You stood there and let your mother buy a piece of my life right from under me. What's next? Is she going to start paying you to let Chloe use my car or wear my clothes?" My voice was rising to a fever pitch, my hands shaking. I was gesturing wildly now, pointing at the sofa, at the walls, at him. "This is not a boarding house, and I am not a landlord. This is my home, the one thing in my life that is completely and totally mine, and you sold a piece of it for a couple of months' rent." He opened his mouth to argue, his face flushed with shame and anger, but he was saved by the bell, or rather, the shrill buzz of the intercom. We both froze, staring at the small white box on the wall as if it were a venomous snake. "That'll be them," Alex said quietly, his gaze pleading with me. "Please, Sarah, just don't make a scene. We can talk about this later." "Oh, we are way past talking later, Alex," I hissed. But the fight had been knocked out of me, replaced by a paralyzing sense of being trapped. He was right. I couldn't scream at his sister and mother in the lobby. They had me cornered. With a deep, shuddering breath, I pressed the button. "Hello?" "It's us, sweetie." "Buzz us in." A chirpy, sickeningly sweet voice sang through the speaker. It was Brenda, my future mother-in-law. Alex scurried to the door, opening it just as the elevator dinged. And there they were. Brenda, a small bird-like woman with a smile that never quite reached her cold, calculating eyes, was beaming. Behind her stood Chloe, looking pale and overwhelmed, clutching a wilting potted plant like a shield. She wouldn't look at me. "Sarah, darling," Brenda chirped, bustling past Alex to wrap me in a cloud of cloying perfume and deceit. "Thank you so, so much for doing this. You are an absolute saint." We were just saying in the car, Alex is the luckiest man in the world to have found someone so generous. Every word was a perfectly aimed dart, designed to paint me as the villain if I dared to object. I gave a tight, forced smile that felt more like a grimace. Before I could even form a response, Brenda clapped her hands together, all business. Right, no time to waste. Alex, you and Chloe start with the boxes. I'll direct traffic. We need to get this U-Haul unloaded before their time is up. And just like that, the invasion began. Box after box, piece after piece of cheap particle board furniture started appearing in my living room. A garish, floral armchair, a towering stack of plastic storage bins, a floor lamp shaped like a giant twisted vine. My serene, minimalist space was being overrun with clutter. I stood there, rooted to the spot by the sheer audacity of it all, a silent, horrified spectator to the dismantling of my own life. Brenda was a tiny tornado, pointing and ordering, completely ignoring me as she instructed Alex to shove my beautiful fiddle-leaf fig tree into a corner to make room for Chloe's TV stand. Finally, I found my voice. "Wait," I said, stepping forward. "Stop. Where exactly is all of this supposed to go?" Brenda turned to me, her smile tightening just a fraction. "Oh, don't you worry, dear. I have it all figured out. We came by last week while you were at work to take some measurements. We just need to move your bookshelf over to that wall." She gestured vaguely. "And the daybed will fit perfectly right here." My blood ran cold. "You were in my apartment? Behind my back? Measuring my things?" She waved a dismissive hand, as if I were a child fussing over a broken toy. "Of course. We had to make sure everything would fit. In fact," she said, her eyes gleaming with triumph as she delivered the final blow, "we realized that once we get rid of that big, bulky desk of yours in the office nook, we can put up a nice privacy screen and Chloe will have her own little bedroom." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Get rid of my desk. The desk where I'd built my freelance career, the one I had custom made with the last of my savings. They weren't just moving Chloe in, they were erasing me from my own home. Something inside me snapped. The calm, the shock, the fury. It all coalesced into a single point of icy clarity. I looked from Brenda's smug, triumphant face to Alex, who was now studiously avoiding my gaze, pretending to be absorbed in adjusting a box labeled Chloe's knickknacks. In that moment, I saw my future laid out before me. It was a future of Brenda's decisions, of Alex's spineless compliance, of my home and my life being constantly rearranged to suit everyone but me. I took a slow, deliberate breath. Then I turned and walked calmly to the front door. With a flick of my wrist, I turned the deadbolt. The loud, definitive click echoed through the apartment, and suddenly, all movement ceased. Alex, Chloe, and Brenda all turned to stare at me. "Sarah? What are you doing?" Alex asked, a note of panic in his voice. I leaned against the door, crossing my arms over my chest. My voice, when it came out, was devoid of all emotion. It was as flat and cold as a glacier. "The moving party is over. Brenda, Chloe, you have 5 minutes to get every single one of these boxes out of my apartment." Brenda let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Don't be ridiculous, dear. We're just getting started." "No," I said, my eyes locking onto hers. "You're finished. You came into my home without my permission. You measured my furniture like a burglar casing a joint. You conspired with my fiancé to redecorate my life. That is not generosity. That is a hostile takeover. And it ends now." I turned my gaze to Chloe, who looked like she was about to cry. For the first time, I felt a flicker of pity. but it was quickly extinguished. "Chloe, I am sorry you lost your job. I truly am. But this," I gestured to the mountain of boxes, "is not the solution. Your mother and your brother have put you in an impossible position, and for that I am sorry. But you cannot stay here." Finally, I looked at Alex, my fiancé, the man I was supposed to build a life with. "And you," I said, my voice cracking for the first time, "you betrayed me. You sold me out to your mother. You stood by and let her dismantle my home, my sanctuary, my desk, and you said nothing. You made a decision with her that affects every single aspect of my life, and you didn't even have the decency to warn me." "Sarah, please," he begged, taking a step toward me. "Don't do this. This is my family." "Exactly," I said, holding up a hand to stop him. "And you've made it very clear where your loyalties lie. Your family's needs, orchestrated by your mother, will always come before me. I refuse to live my life as a supporting character in The Brenda Show." I pulled my engagement ring off my finger. It felt strangely light. I walked over to Alex and didn't place it in his hand. I dropped it into the box he was holding, where it clinked against whatever knickknacks were inside. "You have 2 minutes," I said, my voice hardening again as I walked back to the door. "Then I am calling the police and having you all removed for trespassing." The threat hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Brenda's jaw dropped. She opened her mouth, a furious retort on her lips. But when she saw the look in my eyes, she seemed to realize I was not bluffing. The game was over. She had pushed too far, and I had finally pushed back. A frantic, silent scramble began. The tiny tornado was now working in reverse, herding her children to grab boxes and shuttle them out into the hallway. Alex kept trying to catch my eye, his face a mess of confusion and regret, but I refused to look at him. I just stared at the wall above his head, counting the seconds. Within minutes, my living room was clear. It was just me and Alex left. The door to the hallway stood open, revealing the pile of their discarded plans. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice hoarse, "we can fix this." "No, we can't," I replied, finally meeting his gaze. The love I felt for him was still there, but it was buried under layers of betrayal and disrespect. "You can't fix this because you don't even see what's broken. Goodbye, Alex." I didn't slam the door. I closed it softly, deliberately. I turned the deadbolt, the sound now signifying not a beginning, but an end. An end to the invasion, an end to my engagement, an end to a life where I wasn't in charge. Leaning against the cool wood of the door, I surveyed my apartment. It was messy, with furniture pushed into odd corners and the lingering scent of Brenda's perfume, but it was quiet. It was mine. And for the first time in hours, I could finally breathe.